Although it's been said many times, many ways, you are probably not paying very close attention to an extremely active, mostly one-sided battle raging around us. You are probably more in line with the 69% of US citizens who say they really don't believe that there is an actual war on Christmas plaguing our land. But even as you and I dismiss such fake-ish news, a staggering 60% of those who voted our current administration into the White House believe that the war on Christmas is alive and thoroughly thriving. And 24% of those voters believe that the war on Christmas is of more immediate concern than a potential war with China. Merry Christmas to you. This war on Christmas debate took its most recent roots in a 2004 diatribe by former Fox News fixture Bill O'Reilly, that beacon of Christmas joy. And it spread like Yule log fire, focusing a great deal of its icy ire on the seemingly harmless phrase, Happy Holidays. This greeting, Happy Holidays, represents the ultimate offense to O'Reilly and other merry, gentle people. And over the past decade plus, the voices opposing the portentous political correctness of the phrase have continued to cry out in the worldly wilderness, warning of oncoming anti-Christian doom. And they've most recently been granted an even larger, louder platform by our current White House administration, which balks at the mere suggestion that a holiday language reboot might be appropriate in an increasingly diverse nation, but apparently has no problem forbidding the Center for Disease Control from using certain words. By the way, diversity, entitlement, fetus, transgender, vulnerable, evidence-based, and science-based. Say them loud and proud and joyfully. But here's a little history lesson. The war on Christmas argument has been going on in this country for centuries, rearing its tobogganed head umpteen times, particularly over the last 100 years, and most often when the dual threats of evil immigration and sinful secularism come poking their naughty heads around our precious Christian ideals. But funnily enough, the only time Christmas has ever actually been outlawed in this country, and it actually has been completely banned once for a full 22 years, get ready. The only time it's ever been outlawed, it was outlawed by Christians. When in 1659, Puritan lawmakers in the Massachusetts Bay Colony issued an edict eradicating the holiday because its excesses went against their purifying plans. So here's their edict in those 17th century lawmakers' own convoluted puritanical words. Let's do this together. For preventing disorders arising in several places within this jurisdiction, by reason of some still observing such festivals as were superstitiously kept in other countries, to the great dishonor of God and offense to others, it is therefore ordered by this court and the authority thereof, that whosoever shall be found observing any such day as Christmas or the like, either by forbearing of labor, feasting, or any other way, upon such accountance as aforesaid, every person so offending shall pay of every such offense 5 shillings as a fine to the county. Donna and I will be collecting your 5 shillings in the back after service, you heathens. Now here's the deal, folks. As currently stated on our message board outside, I believe that the real promise and threat of the phrase Happy Holidays is not that it's anti-Christian, but that it's pro-everybody. in a country where many of our top officials don't want this country to be for everybody. So just imagine if everybody were to embrace the gargantuan open-armed greeting of happy holidays, the radically inclusive wintry welcome of it all might just be too big to be controlled by the selfish Scrooges currently clinging to the branches of this country's government. But we faithful have a superpower. Our faith has never been so small that it needs to be caged by one specific, exclusive phrase, even a phrase as monolithic as Merry Christmas. We faithful can have our Christmas and share the table too. And that's a terrifying thing to those whose idea of faith is chained to nationalistic, exclusivist, money-grubbing, sectarian fear. If you truly believe in the gifts of Christmas, you don't need closed-off comfort to silence the abundant diversity around you. If you truly believe in the gifts of Christmas, you don't need closed-off comfort to dismiss the humanity of others in order to lift yourself up. But even as I grow ever more comfortable with trading Merry Christmas out in order to say Happy Holidays, there is another word that I like even more than merry or happy. Today, little Oliver Batman Mosley, real name, lit the shepherd's candle, the third light in our Advent wreath. And that candle represents joy. One of my top 3 favorite words. But beyond some lyrics in old Christmas carols, I don't know how often we think of the deep theological metabolic potential of true joy. I know I don't often differentiate between my own desire for long-lasting joy versus some transient, temporary happiness or even merriness. But happiness and merriness, though tangential to joy, can't capture the mystical depths of what that little 3-letter word represents. Our English vocabulary can't seem to plumb these depths. Even quick online searches for the definition of joy fail to differentiate it from plain old happiness or pleasure. But real joy moves beyond a fluctuating state of individual well-being, of individual satisfaction, and points towards something life-alteringly larger. Real, deep joy is one of the best organizing tools we've got. Anger and outrage certainly help. I use them a lot. But joy sustains movements and action unlike anything else. You can even joyfully call, email, and fax senators about things like Scroogey tax bills if you want. I find joy works better for me than anger and outrage. So just look at today's ancient testimony. It's a comfort and joy-filled classic. But the narrator of this passage is not championing some saccharine comfort and joy meant to lull us into hiding behind slogan-based laziness. Even the surface dualism of the text points to something deeper. This is a creation narrative, just like that famous creation narrative way back in the book of Genesis. Only this time, instead of creating out of nothing, new creation is being conjured from the ashes of sorrow and destruction. It's a recreation narrative. It's a playbook for social justice organizing and for community organizing. Our narrator here, a servant prophet who wants nothing less than the resurrection of an entire demolished community, is finding meaning in the suffering, meaning in the sorrow, and reconfiguring that mournful reality in order to pick up the pieces and shift the community into something new. the sorrowful reality is undeniable. And ashes are only ashes until you recreate them into a beautiful garland. But surface happiness and surface merriness can't cover up sorrow and mourning. Only deep, carefully constructed joy can reshape destruction and organize it into new creation. So this joy, championed by our ancient testimony narrator, points far deeper than the happiness and merriness we often think we want. And it's difficult to capture in English words. In fact, the only way I've found to even come close to defining such joy is not through a concept in our Christian tradition, but actually through a concept in the Buddhist tradition. So thank God, or whatever, that we're not simply a Christian nation, because I had to turn to the Buddhists for this one. I'm no expert in Buddhism, and I'm not even a regular Buddhist practitioner, but the term mudita, a word from Sanskrit and Pali, most powerfully points me toward the resistant potential of the word joy. There's no perfect English counterpart for mudita, but the closest we can get to its definition is the idea of unselfish joy, sympathetic joy, joy in the success of others, the complete opposite of schadenfreude. And to Buddhists, this is pure joy, unadulterated by self-interest. So notice that the terms happiness and merriness don't play into mudita. This is not a temporary, transient, cheerful state. This is a deep practice of embodying joy through solidarity with the successful thriving of one another. And in this country's current climate, mudita, unselfish joy, is a form of resistance. It burrows deeper than the surface happiness and merriness this world and this country tells us that we should go for. In fact, Buddhists believe that if the seed of mudita is methodically cultivated, it will flower into a continuing chain reaction of virtues, leading to emotional and material generosity, more genuine relationship, and a deeper sense of compassion. And many tendencies that lead to suffering, such as jealousy and envy, ill will, cold-heartedness, and just general Scrooginess, will start to melt away. You just have to burrow deep into the unselfish joy. Now, I had a glimpse of mudita this past week. I rarely share anecdotes from my life as co-minister with your senior minister, Reverend Dr. Donna Scopper. You nervous, Donna? But she did something this week that lined up perfectly with all of this joyful exploration, and she basically unwittingly gave me the seed for this sermon. You still nervous? Okay. Donna and I spend a lot of time running past one another and frantically barking updates to one another as we dash to separate meetings. But before our staff holiday party this past Tuesday, we stopped long enough to exchange greeting cards. Now, my card for her was very long and very verbose. Several sentences of characteristically awkward niceties. I'm not the best card writer. And I had just learned of another deportation of one of our new sanctuary friends while I was trying to write it, so I was feeling distracted and disappointed. But when I opened Donna's card for me, I found only 10 words inside. The best 10 words that I could have found that day. It didn't say Merry Christmas, and it didn't even say Happy Holidays. In Donna's classic scrawl, her simple message said, "It is pure joy working with you all these years." From a mentor to a mentee, this is the most galvanizing, rejuvenating message I can fathom. From a teacher of nearly a decade to a student who has become a colleague, this is the most unselfish, supportive message I can imagine. And I believed it. I believe her. And this joy Donna referenced does not protect us from all the transient, temporary stuff that gets in the way of transient, temporary happiness and merriness. It doesn't protect us from the deep sorrow of loss and mourning that inevitably comes when you shepherd a community together. And it doesn't protect you from the deep sorrow of continual disappointments that keep coming at you when you are doing work for social justice in a constantly unjust system. But this joy runs deeper than all of that. And at its best, it is mudita, a joy that she and I feel for working side by side in a place where it is literally our job to cultivate the same joy in all of you. A joy that does not come and go in the moment, but one that can only be sustained in a community where we don't ignore the sorrow, where we don't ignore the ashes, where we collect one another's sorrows and ashes and continually recreate them into a deeply beautiful garland of community. How small and fragile some people's faith must be if they feel they must cling to specific words and symbols and deny communal joy to those around them. When such small and fragile faith runs so rampant in this country, deep, unselfish joy, mudita, is a form of resistance. And our little joyful pockets of resistance have real organizing power. So what if this year, no matter what you said to greet somebody, whether it was Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays or something else, what if under it all, you were deeply thinking, I wish you joy, and truly meant it? How would that mudita change you? And how might it change someone else? And how might it change everything? Your calls, your emails, your faxes, your protests. It is pure joy working with all of you, living with all of you, creating and recreating community with you. Sometimes we cry, and sometimes we behave badly, and sometimes we have to pick up the ashes and remake our garland, but none of that ever takes away from the joy we are cultivating together. Something beyond Merry Christmases and even beyond Happy Holidays, burrowing beneath the wintry cold on the surface of our skin, deep in the warm collective heart of this community. And if you've been in this community long enough, you know that nothing sustains my joy more readily than Dolly Parton songs. So while we sit in this space between the sorrow and the joy that comes with every single turn of this season, let's sing a little Dolly classic together. Henko, take it away.